Moving on from sins of omission, right? Blocking, transience, and absent-mindedness. Let's talk about now when memory is it's remembered, but it's wrong. Okay, so misattribution is when you have a memory, but you have it linked to the wrong time, place, person, or source. So misattribution is when you're talking to your friend and you're telling them this story, and they're like, "I told you this." You're like, "Oh no, I couldn't remember which friend it was." Or even better, when you're talking to your parents and they tell you the same story they've told you 100 times because they can't remember the time and place that they told you. Mine do this a lot. So misattribution is linking the memory to the wrong episodic piece. So false recognition occurs when we encounter something that we think we've seen before. So it's sort of like priming, but bad priming, where it's tied semantically or perceptually to something we have seen, but we haven't seen this particular thing. So this is when you wave at someone on campus, and then they get closer to you, and you're like, "Oh, I don't know who that person is," and they sort of awkwardly wave back. That's a false recognition. So a moment where you're like, "Oh yeah, hey, what's up?" And then they're like, "Oh hey, I don't know you. What's going on?" That's a relatively simple moment. But misattribution can be very bad. So a false recognition of a perpetrator, example, an eyewitness testimony. So, some brain studies. Amnesic patients show lower levels of false recognition than healthy people. So there's something about that taking out that memory system, which lowers false recognition, which is, duh. Some studies suggest that recognition and false recognition activate different perceptual processes. So this is cool. Your brain actually knows that this one's real and this one's fake, but it's not telling you. And what it is there's just some like subtle difference that your brain patterns, so you're getting two different activations, but they're so close that you perceptually interpret them as the same. So we talked about sensation and perception. It's the idea that the sensations are so similar that perceptually you're just sort of like, yeah, oh wait, they're the same, but they're not. The second one is suggestibility. And this research is super fascinating. So we can implant false memories by basically leading participants. So this is why leading questions are not allowed anymore in the courtroom or in police questioning, that sort of thing. And so there's a famous study called the bump crash study, which I think should be, nope, not on this slide, where what they did was they showed people a video of an accident. And then afterwards, they asked them to rate how fast was the car going when they bumped into the other car, how fast was the car going when they crashed into the other car. If I say bump, you write 20, 40 miles an hour. If I say crashed, you write 60 miles an hour and up. So just that one subtle word difference completely changed people's perceptions of what happened in the event because I am suggesting how fast they go. Okay, so that's a big implication for eyewitness testimony. If I lead you in the direction how many shots were fired, that implies a lot of things. That there was a gun, that there was shooting, that I should have been counting. Okay, so you try not to lead people because you can suggest things that happened. And then this recovered memory therapy stuff. And so there was a big push in the 90s, 80s, 90s, about these satanic cults. People were having all these recovered memories of all these sex orgies and all this crazy stuff. If you watch True Detective on HBO, this is kind of talking about one of those cases. And what they finally figured out was that these things hadn't actually happened. What had happened was that they had suggested that was what happened, and that people had formed false memories of the event. So this is traumatic to everyone involved. It's traumatic to the people that get accused. It's traumatic to the people who think that these things are real. And eyewitness testimony, if you get convicted, it's a problem on both sides. So suggestibility is super important for lots of practical reasons. Okay. So I've explained the Loftus car study to you. That's the bump crash study. The first real study on this effect was the Lost in the Mall study. And if you just Google Elizabeth Loftus, you'll find tons of videos. She does lots of talks. She's really fascinating. And what she did was she gave people 3 events that had happened in their life. So they worked with their parents or some friend and found 3 events that had happened in childhood. So true. Then everybody got this specific case of being lost in the mall and very scared, and that some elderly woman had rescued them and reunited them with their parents. And that was not true for any of the participants. So they gave the participants these 3 stories and this last Lost in the Mall one, and then asked them had they happened to them. So they said yes, no. And then they asked them to think about the events. They came back to the lab several times, and what happened was that people slowly remembered this Lost in the Mall story as having truly happened to them. So I think 1/4 of the participants said, oh yeah, that happened to me, and then made up details about the event. There have been lots and lots of studies on this since the Lost in the Mall study, and you can get up to 60% of the people to remember something that never happened to them, and they will truly believe that it really was, it really did happen to them. Sometimes this is called the misinformation effect. There's several different names. This is the second most popular one. Because what happens is you give people some true information and some false information, and they sort of get like lumped all together, and you can't tell which piece is true and which piece is false. So why does that happen? Well, when I suggest this false information about this event, that misinformation overrides the original encoded information. Especially if it makes sense with what the story is. Alright, third commission problem is bias. So bias is something that we just have to live with. It's just a natural human thing that's not necessarily the best, but it's just the way we are. Okay, so it's a distortion of memory because of knowledge of the way the world works, current beliefs and attitudes, or expectations. Okay. And this is all that top-down stuff. So what they did was they gave people a paragraph about a woman, and in one paragraph they called her Helen Keller, and another paragraph they called her Carol Harris. If you ask people, did the story talk about being deaf and blind? If you got the Helen Keller story, you said yes no matter what. It didn't. It's a trick. If you got the Carol Harris story, only a small proportion of people inaccurately reported that it said that it had deaf and blind in it. So because of our world knowledge about the way things work, that expectation, of course the Helen Keller one has deaf and blind in it, no duh, everybody knows that, when in reality it hadn't. That's a very simple version of bias, but bias can lead us into all sorts of problems. So belief bias is our background knowledge about the way the world works, and our personal beliefs influence memory in a way that makes it consistent with our expectations. So things happen because I believe this is the way the world works. And belief bias can be especially problematic in the courtroom. So what they'll do is they'll dress defendants up because we, for some reason, have this belief that attractive people can do no wrong. And so cleaning up a defendant is one way to help with their case, just simply because we have this unconscious belief that attractive people have all these characteristics. Consistency bias is one of my favorites. And so it's the idea that we believe our attitudes are stable over time. And most of them are, yeah. But lots of them aren't. And so if you end a relationship and it ends sour, so it's pretty poor, what you'll do is slowly change those memories from that relationship so that you believe, well, he was a jerk all the time. Okay? What you'll see is that people will bias those memories to be consistent with their current attitude. So it was bad the whole time. I should have known better, right? But you also see that in the reverse, so it can work good for us. If our current happiness is much higher, we might bias our early memories if it wasn't as happy. So we got happier over time, those first memories will be seen as happier. So it works both ways, generally in the negative though. Persistence is the last type of the sins of memory. And that is remembering when you would prefer not to. So it's the opposite of motivated forgetting theory. So there are problems with this with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, where people have persistent memories, flashbacks, episodes. And sometimes this is called the rebound effect. So if you are told, don't think of the white bear, you're just sort of stuck in this circle where you can't get it out of your head and you can't make it stop. So persistence is a memory problem that is not forgetting or distortion. It's I want to forget and I can't. So what are some applications to all of this research? So looking at reconstructive memory. Memory is a reconstructive process. It is not a camera. It is not a current stream of information. It's a constantly reworked piece. We talked a little bit about eyewitness testimony, and then we'll end on false memory. So memory is reconstructive. We take the past and rebuild it rather than reproducing it. So when you are remembering something, it's not like you turn on a little camera, boop, and you rewatch the scene. You are building it back up. And you can see this in events where you and your friends are talking about what happened last week. And it's, no, he said this, and then I said this, and then you did that. And you're like, no, you have it all wrong. This happened first, then this happened second. Because memory is not perfect, it's not a camera. So we reconstruct events, which is one of the reasons why all of these bias, suggestibility, and misattributions happen. Because it's very easy to sort of tweak memory when you're trying to build it back up. So Bartlett was really the first one to come up with this idea in the 1930s. And a lot of his studies were on, he gave people paragraphs and asked them to remember them, and asked them to remember them several times to see what happened to the event. Generally, they get shorter, so we're forgetting information, so we're just making it more concise. Things that are unfamiliar with us, we tend to get rid of. So things that don't... we didn't get the first time is done. It's gone. Okay. And then generally we tend to make stories more concise, more conventional. So this is belief bias, more attuned to what we would have tried to remember. I think this is the War of the Ghosts study where they had them remembering stories from Native American populations, and so we found that mostly Caucasian men in the 1930s were eliminating a lot of those interpretations that wouldn't have been consistent with their culture. All right, so a little bit on eyewitness testimony. So memory is reconstructive. And so that is a huge problem for eyewitness testimony. Essentially, if you're ever in court, you should hope to God they don't have an eyewitness. Because most people on the jury find eyewitness testimony to be the most believable thing, and that's what's going to get you convicted. But it's actually the least reliable thing of all the different sciences that we have. So I'm going to ask you to, there's a link online, but you should check out Gary Wells' website. The videos don't record very well if we try to video a video. And watch his bomber video. Now, I will warn you, his website is a hot mess. It looks like someone exploded on it. But if you go to about the middle of the page or just search for the word bomber, you'll find that he has an eyewitness testimony test in the middle of it. And you'll find that you got it wrong because he's got it set up for you to get it wrong and to learn from it. There's also a bunch of videos on eyewitness testimony and his work with how to make it better that are really fascinating. And so his argument is that witnesses who want to get it right, they want to do it right for the cops. And the cops want to get it right because that gets somebody convicted and that's their job. And the DAs want to get it right because that's their job. And so everybody is in this, I want to please the witness, not the witness, the whoever. And so there's a lot of suggestibility that can go on and a lot of misattribution. So remembering exactly when and how you learned something. So go do the bomber study. It's great. You'll find that you're not very good at it. So what do we do? I wish we could not use eyewitness testimony at all because that would be the most reliable thing to do. But instead, what Gary Wells suggests is to use structured interviews. So if this type of crime, then these types of questions. And that will help with the suggestibility component of witnesses. Especially not to use the picture books. So they have these picture books where you can pick that nose and these eyes because that tends to create like misattribute memory. So you're like, oh, well, I saw this nose, so it has to be this guy. Hi, you're super cute. You are super cute. Sit down here. Right? And then his big work, Gary Wells's work, has been on the types of lineups. So if we give people simultaneous lineups, the traditional thing you see on Law & Order and SVU, where you have 6 guys standing in a line and you say it's number 4. Those are really bad because what happens is people make comparisons. Well, I know it's not 1 because he's too tall, and I know it's not 2 because he's too fat. And so you make these comparisons between these items, and then you will say, well, it has to be 4 because that's the closest one, which is really bad if you think about it. So if I give you a simultaneous lineup, there's pressure to pick the person, especially if the person giving the lineup, the cop, the DA, or whatever, knows who it is. So they might lead you to who it's supposed to be. The solution is to do sequential lineups. So what happens in sequential lineups is they show you one person at a time. So here's person 1, yes or no. And you go, no. Here's person 2, yes or no. No. And you can get all the way through a sequential lineup without saying that anyone was the perpetrator. So there's a lot less of this sort of comparison between individuals and a lot more of like direct memory comparison. It's still not perfect, but it's better than the system that a lot of people use. And so his work is really great because it has a direct impact on things that you see in the world, and a lot of places have now made sequential lineups law. So it's kind of neat because it is something that applies to everyday life. I'm going to end on false memories. So because memory is reconstructive, we can get people to remember things that never happened to them. This is sort of the Loftus effect, where she implanted memories. But it's actually much easier than telling them all these stories that were about their lives and then giving them a fake story. You can implant memories with a simple set of words. So this is one of the experiments for this section. So go take the DRM experiment. It's Deese, Roediger, McDermott. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you a bunch of words and show you how you can create false memories by using a simple word list. Okay, so false memories are easy to do. I'll leave the punchline for the actual experiment, so you should definitely go take that. That's the example, so you can see how easy it is to create false memories. Last section. The hippocampus. Oh, this hippocampus. We've been talking about the hippocampus for quite some time now. And its role in amnesia. So a little bit on the brain and forgetting. So there's 2 types of amnesia. I covered this a little bit before. Retrograde is the loss of memory for events that occurred before an injury. And this doesn't have to be your brain got cut up. It can be car accidents cause retrograde amnesia. bump to the head, so concussions, a couple other things. Anterograde amnesia is an inability to learn new things. So retro, we lose the old stuff. Anterograde, we lose the new stuff. So what are the causes for retrograde amnesia? So a bump to the head. This is not permanent. If you get in a car accident or have a concussion, those memories will slowly come back. Not all of them, but most. Korsakoff syndrome, which is chronic alcoholism. Not the stuff you do in college, but very serious alcoholism. A brain infection like encephalitis, particularly likes to eat the hippocampus. Or being on a soap opera, which is sort of a joke because the loss of all episodic memory, where you don't know who you are and you don't know what's going on, it's just so incredibly rare. So those sort of soap opera stories where they don't remember anything is pretty rare. I mean, 0.0001% kind of stuff. Some little bit more about anterograde amnesia. So we can learn some things in long-term memory. We talked about HM and the mirror tracing event, especially procedural memory. So anterograde is pretty crappy because you can't remember anything new, but there is some preservation of learning. So it's not just the hippocampus that does stuff, it's some other places too, like the prefrontal cortex. So the summation of this section is that memory is wonderful. I love remembering things, but it's reconstructive, so that's bad. There's two types of theories. We have our old theories, which are the Demer theories, and we have our newer theories, which is the 7 sins model. And all of those have very serious implications on just functioning in your daily life. So bias can be bad for you. Misattribution can be particularly bad if you're trying to remember where you learned something. And so the more serious things are this recovered memory sort of thing, eyewitness testimony, and false memories, because false memories can be very disturbing to people. And a lot of that stuff has to do with your hippocampus. It can be a little squirrely sometimes. And so we talked about how this forgetting occurs. So go take the DRM study so you can look at how easy it is to create a false memory.